Rick Holden gripped the controls of his ship, Iron Fang, as it drifted through the wreckage of a recent battle. Scanners flickered with weak energy signals, marking the remains of what had once been a Xyrenian royal cruiser. Xyrenians, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, never traveled alone. Yet there were no escort ships, no distress beacons, just silence. Strange, Rick muttered, his fingers tapping the control panel. His instincts told him something was off. This wasn't a pirate raid. This was a targeted attack. A faint life signal appeared on his scanner. Someone was alive. Rick didn't hesitate. He suited up, grabbed his plasma pistol, and stepped into the wreckage through a breached airlock. Inside, the ship was a graveyard. The smooth silver walls were blackened with scorch marks. Bodies of Xyrenian warriors lay scattered, their armor shattered. Whoever did this was precise, professional. His helmet light flickered over a broken doorway. Beyond it, in a collapsed chamber, he spotted movement. A figure trapped under debris. He rushed forward, pulling away chunks of metal. Beneath the wreckage lay a Xyrenian woman. No, not just any Xyrenian. A princess. Rick recognized the royal insignia on her deep blue bodysuit. Her silver hair, streaked with violet, framed a sharp, regal face. Even unconscious, she looked proud, like someone who wasn't used to fear. "Well, aren't you in a mess?" Rick muttered. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Her pulse was weak but steady. He checked the debris pinning her legs. Too heavy to move by hand. He unhooked a small plasma cutter from his belt and sliced through the metal. The moment the weight was gone, her body tensed, and she let out a weak groan. Her violet eyes fluttered open. Rick barely had time to react before she tried to sit up, her expression shifting from confusion to sharp distrust. Human. Her voice was hoarse, but the disdain was clear. Rick leaned back on his heels. "You're welcome," he said dryly. She ignored him, glancing around at the destruction. When she saw the bodies of her guards, her face paled. For the first time, she looked shaken. Who did this?" "That's what I'd like to know," Rick said. "But right now, we need to move. More ships could be coming." She turned her sharp gaze back to him. "You are alone." "Yeah. Problem." She frowned, as if struggling to understand how a single human had gotten here. "I do not require assistance," she said stiffly. She tried to stand, but pain shot through her leg, and she collapsed with a gasp. Rick sighed. "Sure, you don't." He crouched and slung her arm over his shoulder. She stiffened at the contact, clearly hating the idea of relying on a human. "You dare touch a princess of Xyrenia," she snapped. "You want to stay here and wait for whoever tried to kill you." Rick shot back. She clenched her jaw, but didn't argue. He took that as a small victory. Carrying her back to the Iron Fang wasn't easy. The wreckage shifted around them, making every step dangerous. Twice, he had to stop to blast apart fallen beams. But finally, they reached the airlock. As soon as the door sealed shut, his ship's AI, Nova, spoke. "Warning. Unidentified Xyrenian lifeform detected. Do you require security measures?" "Stand down, Nova," Rick said. "She's a guest." "Guest?" The princess scoffed. "You kidnapped me." Rick let out a short laugh as he set her down on a medical cot. "Lady, if I kidnapped you, you'd be tied up. I just saved your royal hide." "You're welcome." She glared at him but didn't reply. He grabbed a medkit and started scanning her injuries. Minor fractures, dehydration, nothing life-threatening. "You'll live," he said. "But you might want to explain why someone wanted you dead." Her expression darkened. "You assume too much, human." Rick smirked. "Maybe. But I bet my ship that you know the answer." The princess didn't speak, but Rick could see the flicker of fear behind her defiance. Whatever was going on, she was in trouble. And now so was he. Outside the ship, his scanners beeped. Incoming ships. Trouble was already here. Inside the quiet cabin of the Iron Fang, The princess sat on a small cot with her eyes fixed on the wall. The room was dimly lit by a soft light from a nearby panel. Princess Alzira still felt the sting of pain in her leg, and the shock of the rescue made her heart race. Across the room, Rick Holden was busy checking her injuries with his small med kit. He worked slowly and carefully, his movements calm and deliberate. Alzira's face showed anger and hurt. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked in a clear, steady voice. "I am a princess of Zerenia. I do not need the help of a human." Rick paused and looked up from his work. He set his tools aside and met her sharp gaze. "I did not bring you here for my own sake," he said simply. "I found you in danger. Your ship was attacked. You needed help, and I could not leave you there." Her eyes narrowed. "Attacked? My ship is a symbol of my people's strength. This was no random act. It was planned," she replied, her voice trembling slightly with a mix of anger and fear. Rick nodded slowly. "I saw marks on the wreckage. They are not from common raiders. I believe someone wanted you dead. I came here as soon as I saw your signal. I have fought many battles, and I know that even the strongest can fall when alone." Alzira's pride made her stiff. "I have been raised to be brave. I have been taught that my royal blood sets me above the common. I do not need a human to save me." "But even the brave need help sometimes," Rick said in a soft tone. "Honor is not about never falling. It is about rising when you fall. I saved you so you can rise again. And there is more to this than just your life. There are hidden forces at work, and they may put your people in danger." The princess's eyes flickered with uncertainty. She had never thought that her own strength might not be enough. Rick's words made her feel small, yet they also stirred something within her, a spark of hope mixed with worry. "What do you mean by hidden forces?" she asked quietly. Before Rick could answer, the ship's small console beeped. He walked over to the screen and brought up an encrypted message. The display showed a short text that he quickly read. "This message confirms my suspicion," Rick said, his voice low and serious. "The attack on your cruiser was not random. It was planned by a group that opposes the way Zarenians treat others. They want to send a message, and it is not just aimed at you." Alzira leaned forward, her face growing pale. She had always believed in the strength and honor of her people. The news shook her deeply. "Then my life was in danger long before I was rescued," she whispered. Her voice was soft, yet full of fear. "I must speak with my father and the council. They need to know of this threat." Rick looked at her with steady eyes. "I agree," he said, "but right now we must be cautious. We need to find a safe place and gather more information before you contact your people. They might be closer than you think, and it could be a trap." The princess stared at him for a long moment. Her royal pride fought with the need to survive. Slowly, she said, "I do not like relying on a human, but I see no other choice. I will trust you for now." Rick offered a small nod. "I do not ask for your trust easily, but I promise I will help you find the truth. Together, we can learn who is behind these attacks and how to stop them." Alzira looked out the small window of the ship, where stars shimmered in the deep dark. She thought of the life she had known, a life of honor and power, now shattered by violence. "I have always known my life was set on a certain path," she said softly. "Now, everything is uncertain, but I must protect my people." Rick stepped closer and placed a steady hand on the table beside her. "We are both fighting for what is right," he said simply. "I have lost friends because I did not act when I could have helped. I will not let that happen again. I will fight for you and for the truth." The room fell silent as the weight of their new alliance settled in. Both Rick and Alzira knew that the journey ahead would be long and filled with danger. Each word they spoke was measured and careful. For a moment, it seemed as if the vastness of space and the dangers beyond the stars had drawn them together. Their differences, one born of royal blood and one forged in the heat of battle, now bound them in a common cause. Outside, the hum of the Iron Fang's engines filled the air as the ship moved away from the dark remains of the wreck. A bond of necessity and of hope. Two very different lives had come together, driven by the simple need to survive and to fight against those who would do harm. Together, they resolved to face the unknown, trusting that their combined strength would be enough to overcome the dark forces that threatened both the princess's people and the fragile peace of the galaxy. Rick sat in the pilot's seat, his fingers tapping the controls as he guided the Iron Fang through the vast emptiness of space. The ship hummed steadily, but the tension inside was anything but calm. In the seat beside him, Princess Alzera sat stiffly, her sharp violet eyes locked on the holographic display in front of them. The screen showed a red flashing signal. Incoming ships detected. Rick clenched his jaw. "Looks like your people aren't wasting any time," he muttered. Alzera's expression hardened. "It's not my people," she said. "If it were an official rescue team, they would have sent a message. These ships are coming in silent. That means they don't want witnesses." Rick glanced at her. "You sure about that?" Alzera nodded, her voice steady but grim. "They're here to finish what they started. Someone powerful wants me dead." Rick let out a slow breath. "Great, and here I thought today was going to be easy." He turned back to the controls, his hands moving quickly as he adjusted their course. The ship's engines roared as they accelerated, but the enemy ships were fast. The scanner showed 3 sleek Xyrenian warships closing in from behind. "Hold on," Rick said, gripping the controls tightly. "Things are about to get rough." With a sharp pull on the thruster, the Iron Fang dove downward, spinning through the asteroid field ahead. Massive rocks drifted in the void, some larger than buildings, their jagged edges illuminated by the distant glow of a nearby star. The Xyrenian ships followed, weaving between the asteroids with precision. They were built for speed and combat, unlike Rick's ship, which was designed more for endurance and survival. Alzera's hands clenched into fists as she watched the enemy ships move effortlessly through the field. "They are elite pilots," she warned. "You can't outrun them." Rick smirked. "I don't need to outrun them." He twisted the controls sharply, sending the Iron Fang spinning toward a large asteroid. At the last second, he fired the ship's reverse thrusters, slowing down just enough to squeeze through a narrow gap. The first Xyrenian ship tried to follow, but the pilot miscalculated. The sleek warship clipped the asteroid's edge, and a fiery explosion burst in the darkness. "One down," Rick said with satisfaction. Alzera's eyes widened. "You did that on purpose." Rick shrugged. "Survival's all about using what you've got." The remaining 2 ships were still on their tail. Alzera looked at the scanner and saw their movements. "They are adjusting. They won't make the same mistake again." Rick sighed. "They never make it easy, do they?" Alzera studied the holographic map quickly. "Head toward that debris field," she said, pointing at a cluster of wreckage ahead. "If we move through it fast enough, their targeting systems will struggle to lock onto us." Rick didn't argue. He pushed the thrusters to full power, diving into the shattered remains of old ships. Broken hulls and twisted metal floated in every direction, creating a deadly maze. The Iron Fang weaved through the wreckage, sparks flying as debris scraped the outer hull. Behind them, the Xyrenian ships hesitated. One tried to follow too closely and slammed into a drifting section of an old cruiser. Another explosion lit up space. Alzera watched, her expression unreadable. "They are trained warriors," she said softly. "Yet you, a human, outmaneuvered them." Rick shot her a sideways glance. "You sound surprised." "I am," she admitted. "Xyrenians believe humans are reckless, undisciplined. But you fight like a soldier. No wasted movement. No hesitation." Rick gave a half smile. "Guess you've been listening to the wrong stories." The final Xyrenian ship had pulled back, but Rick wasn't taking chances. He pushed the engines harder, breaking free from the wreckage and speeding toward open space. The enemy ship hesitated, then turned away, disappearing into the void. Rick let out a breath. Looks like they weren't willing to risk their last ship. Alzira exhaled slowly, still watching the scanner. They will come again. They won't stop until I am dead. Rick leaned back in his seat, his expression serious. Then we'll have to find out who sent them before they try again. For the first time, Alzira looked at him with something other than suspicion. There was a flicker of respect in her gaze. You are different from what I expected, Rick Holden. Rick smirked. I get that a lot. As the Iron Fang disappeared into the vastness of space, both of them knew this was only the beginning. Whoever was behind the attack wasn't finished yet, and neither of them was ready to back down. The Iron Fang glided through the emptiness of space, its engines running on low power to avoid detection. Inside, Rick sat at the controls, scanning for any nearby ships. The fight with the Xyrenian warships had drained his shields, and he wasn't eager for another chase so soon. Behind him, Princess Alzira stood with her arms crossed, deep in thought. She was no longer just a passenger. She was a target. And the people hunting her were determined to finish what they started. Rick glanced over his shoulder. You're quiet, he said. Something on your mind? Alzira's violet eyes flickered toward him. Everything, she admitted. The attack on my ship. The men who tried to kill me. The fact that I am now sitting inside a human ship, running for my life. Rick smirked. Not what you expected. She exhaled sharply. No. Xyrenians are taught that humans are reckless, unpredictable. But you fight with skill. You think before you act. That is not how humans are described in our records. Rick leaned back in his seat. Maybe your people don't know as much about us as they think. Alzira hesitated, then nodded slightly. Perhaps. A soft beep from the control panel made them both turn. Rick checked the screen and frowned. A signal was coming from a nearby moon, hidden in the shadow of a gas giant. It was weak, but the frequency was one he recognized. Rick tapped the console. This is a coded distress signal. It's coming from someone who doesn't want to be found. Alzira's expression turned cautious. Is it a trap? Could be, Rick admitted. But it's worth checking out. If someone's in trouble, we might get information about who's hunting you. Alzira crossed her arms. And if it's an ambush? Rick grinned. Then we make them regret it. With a flick of a switch, he adjusted course toward the moon. As they approached, the surface came into view. A barren, rocky wasteland with deep canyons and craters. The signal led them to a hidden outpost, built into the side of a cliff. Rick brought the Iron Fang down carefully, landing near the entrance. Stay close, he told Alzira as they stepped out into the cold air. The outpost was silent. Too silent. Rick kept his hand near his plasma pistol as he moved forward, Alzira right behind him. The door to the base was already open, its security locks broken. Inside, the lights flickered weakly. The air smelled of burned circuits and something else. Something metallic and sharp. Rick's instincts went on high alert. Be ready for anything, he muttered. Alzira nodded, gripping a small energy dagger she had taken from the ship. As they moved deeper into the outpost, they found signs of a struggle. Scorch marks from plasma weapons lined the walls. Broken equipment lay scattered on the floor, but no bodies. Rick knelt beside a damaged console, tapping a few buttons. A weak holographic recording flickered to life. A tired-looking human man appeared, his face lined with worry. This is Captain Joran Hale, he said. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it. The Xyrenians are hunting anyone who knows the truth about their war plans. They don't want peace. They want total control. Alzira's breath caught. That's a lie, she whispered. My father, he wants peace. Rick kept watching. They are eliminating anyone who stands in their way, Captain Hale continued. And now, they are coming for the princess, if she is still alive. Tell her she must not trust. The recording cut off suddenly. Silence filled the room. Rick and Alzira exchanged looks. "He was trying to warn me," she said, her voice shaking. "But who?" Before Rick could answer, a sharp beeping sound echoed through the base. Rick spun around, his eyes widening. "We need to go. Now." Alzira didn't question him. They ran back toward the ship as the beeping grew faster. The moment they reached the ramp, an explosion erupted behind them, sending a shockwave through the ground. Rick pulled Alzira into the ship and slammed the hatch shut. "Nova, get us out of here." The Iron Fang roared to life, lifting off just as the outpost collapsed into flames. As they sped away, Alzira stared at the destruction. "Someone erased the evidence," she said quietly. "Someone with power." Rick's grip tightened on the controls. "And they're not done yet." The hunt was far from over. The Iron Fang shot through the vast emptiness of space, leaving behind the burning wreckage of the hidden outpost. Inside the cockpit, Rick tightened his grip on the controls, his mind racing. The explosion had been no accident. Someone had erased Captain Hale's message before it could reveal the truth. Princess Alzira sat beside him, her expression unreadable. The weight of what they had just witnessed pressed down on her. Someone from her own people had ordered the destruction of that base. Someone powerful. Rick broke the silence. "Who do you think he was trying to warn you about?" Alzira hesitated. "I don't know. My father has enemies, yes. There are those in the Zyrenian Council who do not support his peace efforts. But to go this far," she shook her head. "Destroying ships, sending assassins, erasing records. This is something else." Rick glanced at her. "Then we need answers, and I know where to start." He pressed a few buttons on the console, bringing up a star map. A small, isolated moon blinked on the screen. "Ever heard of Duskanine?" he asked. Alzira frowned. "A smuggler's hideout. A place for criminals and outlaws. Why would we go there?" Rick smirked. "Because if someone wants to cover their tracks, they use smugglers to do the dirty work. And I know someone there who sells information. If we pay the right price." Alzira exhaled sharply. "And what exactly do we have to pay with?" Rick tapped the side of his head. "Not credits. Information. If someone ordered an attack on a Zyrenian princess, the underworld will be buzzing with rumors. We just have to listen in the right places." Alzira still looked uncertain, but she gave a slow nod. "Fine. But if this is a trap?" Rick grinned. "Then we do what we always do. Fight our way out." Hours later, the Iron Fang descended onto the dark, dusty surface of Duskanine. The moon was a haven for those who lived outside the law. Its settlements were built into rocky cliffs, hidden beneath thick storm clouds that made scanning from orbit nearly impossible. Rick and Alzira stepped out of the ship, their weapons hidden under their cloaks. The streets of the settlement were filled with alien traders, bounty hunters, and smugglers. It was a place where loyalty was rare, and danger lurked in every shadow. Rick led Alzira through the maze of buildings, stopping in front of a rusty metal door. He knocked twice, then 3 times more in a pattern. A few seconds later, a small panel slid open, revealing a single glowing eye. "Rick Holden," a robotic voice said. "I thought you were dead." Rick smirked. "Not yet, Vox. But I need information." The door creaked open, and they stepped inside. The room was filled with blinking monitors, tangled wires, and stacks of stolen data chips. At the center sat Vox, an old AI-powered droid who had once worked for the Galactic Intelligence Network before vanishing into the underworld. Vox tilted his metallic head. "You bring interesting company," he said, his eye scanning Alzira. "A Zyrenian princess, no less. Very dangerous." Alzira crossed her arms. "Then you know why we're here." Vox made a low, whirring sound. "Yes." The rumors spread fast. The Zyrenian Council is divided. Some want peace with the Terran Federation. Others want war. And then there is a third group, one that works in the shadows, eliminating obstacles. Rick narrowed his eyes. And you think Alzera is an obstacle? Vox's robotic eye flickered. She is not the only one. There are whispers that the king himself may be targeted, that there will be a necessary change in leadership. A coup. Alzera's breath caught. That's impossible. My father is surrounded by loyal warriors. Loyalty means nothing when betrayal pays better, Vox interrupted. Rick cursed under his breath. Do you have names? Vox tapped on a control panel, bringing up a list of encrypted messages. Only fragments. But one name keeps appearing. General Varrock. Alzera's face turned pale. Varrock. He has been my father's military advisor for years. He is a hero of our people. Vox's eye flickered again. Or he is the one planning to take the throne. Silence filled the room. Rick finally spoke. We need proof. Can you track his movements? Vox hesitated. Difficult. He covers his tracks well. But there is one thing. A secret meeting. 3 days from now, in a neutral sector. If you want answers, that is where you'll find them. Alzera took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then we go there, and if Varrock is truly behind this, I will stop him myself. Rick looked at her, nodding. Then we'd better prepare. We just walked into something big. As they left Vox's hideout, the weight of the mission ahead settled over them. The truth was more dangerous than they had imagined. And if they failed, the entire Zyrenian Empire could fall into the hands of a traitor. The Iron Fang soared through deep space, moving toward the neutral sector where General Varrock's secret meeting was set to take place. Inside the cockpit, Rick adjusted the ship's course, while Alzera sat in silent thought. The weight of what they had learned from Vox pressed heavily on her. Her father's trusted advisor, a hero of her people, was possibly the one behind the attacks. The thought made her stomach twist. If Varrock was truly planning a coup, the Zyrenian Empire was in danger. Rick glanced at her. You okay? Alzera let out a slow breath. I grew up believing Varrock was one of the greatest warriors of our time. If he is a traitor, I don't know what that means for my people. Rick nodded. People like him don't betray their leaders without a reason. Either he thinks he's doing the right thing, or someone's paying him a lot to do it. Alzera's expression hardened. Either way, he must be stopped. Rick smirked. That's the spirit. As they neared the neutral sector, Rick brought the ship's power levels down to avoid detection. The coordinates led them to an abandoned space station floating near a dying star. Its metallic surface was rusted, and parts of it were completely dark. Rick maneuvered the Iron Fang behind a large asteroid, hiding their presence. He activated the ship's scanners. There are 6 ships docked, he muttered. Looks like Varrock isn't meeting alone. Alzera peered at the screen. That ship, it belongs to Lord Kavir. Rick raised an eyebrow. Who's that? A powerful council member, Alzera explained. One of my father's greatest rivals. He has always pushed for war with the humans. Rick leaned back. Great. So we've got a war-hungry noble and a high-ranking general meeting in secret. That's not suspicious at all. Alzera narrowed her eyes. We need to get closer. If we can hear what they are planning, we can expose them. Rick sighed. Why do I feel like this is going to be dangerous? Alzera gave him a look. You knew that when you took me with you. Rick chuckled. Fair point. A few minutes later, they'd made their way through the dark corridors of the abandoned station. The air was stale, and the only lights came from flickering emergency panels. Rick moved silently, his blaster ready, while Alzera followed close behind. They reached a large chamber where several figures stood around a holographic table. Rick and Alzera crouched behind a broken console, listening carefully. General Varrock stood at the center, his sharp features illuminated by the blue light of the hologram. Beside him was Lord Kavir, his expression serious. Around them were several high-ranking Zyrenian officers. Varrock spoke first. The king is weak. His dreams of peace with the humans will destroy our empire. Lord Kavir nodded. Then it is agreed. The king must be removed. His daughter is already missing, presumed dead. Without an heir, there will be no resistance. Alzera clenched her fists. Rage burned inside her, but Rick placed a hand on her arm, silently telling her to stay calm. Varrock continued, "We will strike during the upcoming peace talks. The king will not leave that meeting alive." Rick's eyes widened. "They're planning an assassination," he whispered. Alzera's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "We have to stop them." Before Rick could respond, a voice from behind them spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Rick groaned. "Why is it always the guards?" Rick didn't wait. He lunged forward, knocking the weapon aside. The soldier fired, but the blast hit the wall. Alzera struck fast, her energy dagger slicing through the soldier's communicator before he could send another alert. The fight was quick. Rick delivered a hard punch, knocking the guard unconscious. But the damage was done. Inside the chamber, Varrock's head snapped toward the sound of the struggle. His eyes narrowed. "Find them." Alzera grabbed Rick's arm. "We need to go. Now." They sprinted back the way they came, alarms blaring through the station. Soldiers poured into the corridors, weapons ready. Rick fired behind him, hitting a control panel. The doors slammed shut, sealing off their pursuers. They reached the docking bay, where the Iron Fang was waiting. Rick punched the ship's access code, and the ramp lowered. "Get in." Alzera leaped inside as Rick fired a few more shots to slow the soldiers down. Then he jumped aboard, slamming the hatch shut. "Nova, take off," he shouted. The Iron Fang roared to life, lifting off just as enemy fire rained down on them. The ship shot out of the station, breaking into open space. Inside the cockpit, Rick pushed the engines to full power. "They know we're alive now," he said. "They'll come after us." Alzera took a deep breath. "Let them. We have what we need." Rick smirked. "Then let's go save a king." The Iron Fang disappeared into the darkness, heading toward the heart of the Zyrenian Empire. The fight had just begun. The Iron Fang tore through space at full speed, heading straight for the Zyrenian capital. The tension inside the cockpit was thick. Rick kept his hand steady on the controls while Alzera sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. "They'll be hunting us," Rick said. "Varrock won't let us reach your father alive." Alzera's jaw tightened. "We can't let him win. My father needs to know the truth before it's too late." Rick checked the sensors. "We're approaching Zyrenia Prime, but we can't land directly. They'll scan us before we even get close." Alzera thought for a moment, then pointed at the display. "Go to the eastern docking sector. There's an old service tunnel beneath the main palace. We can use it to get inside without being detected." Rick smirked. "Sneaking into a royal palace. Now that's my kind of plan." But before he could change course, the ship's alarm blared. A red warning flashed on the screen. "Incoming ships." Nova, the onboard AI, reported. Rick cursed. They found us fast. 3 Zyrenian warships appeared on the scanner, closing in quickly. The lead ship opened fire, plasma bolts streaking through the darkness. Rick pulled the Iron Fang into a sharp turn, dodging the first shots. "Hold on," he shouted as he rolled the ship to avoid another barrage. Alzera gripped the side of her seat. "We can't fight them head-on." "Wasn't planning to," Rick said. "Nova, deploy decoys." Small energy beacons shot out from the Iron Fang, creating false signals. The enemy ships hesitated for a moment, just long enough for Rick to dive toward a nearby asteroid field. "Are you crazy?" Alzera yelled. "Probably." Rick grinned, weaving the ship between massive floating rocks. Plasma blasts exploded around them, but the warships struggled to follow. One of them clipped an asteroid, spiraling out of control before crashing into another. "One down," Rick muttered. The remaining 2 ships kept chasing them, firing relentlessly. Alzera's eyes widened. "There, that canyon." Rick saw it, a narrow opening between two massive asteroids. "Tight squeeze," he said. "But we're out of options." He pushed the engines to max and shot toward the canyon. The enemy ships followed, but the passage was too tight for their larger frames. One ship hesitated, trying to pull away. Too late. It scraped against the canyon wall, sparks flying before it exploded. "Two down," Rick said. The last warship didn't take the bait. Instead, it hovered outside the canyon, waiting. "They know we have to come out," Alzera said. Rick smirked. "Then let's surprise them." He flipped a switch, diverting power to the rear thrusters. The Iron Fang shot backward, emerging from the canyon at a sharp angle. Before the enemy pilot could react, Rick fired the ship's forward cannons. A direct hit. The warship erupted in flames. "Three down," Rick said, leaning back. "Not bad, huh?" Alzera exhaled, shaking her head. "I can't decide if you're insane or just very good at this." Rick grinned. "Both." But there was no time to celebrate. They had barely escaped, and the real mission was just beginning. A short while later, the Iron Fang landed in a hidden docking bay beneath the palace. Rick and Alzera moved quickly, making their way through the dark service tunnels. "The council meeting is in 1 hour," Alzera whispered. "We have to reach my father before Varrock makes his move." Rick nodded. "Lead the way, princess." They moved through the tunnels, their footsteps echoing. But as they neared the exit, a shadow moved in front of them. A group of guards blocked their path, and standing at the center was General Varrock himself. "So," Varrock said, his voice calm but deadly, "the lost princess returns. I must admit, I expected the assassins to finish you off. But no matter. You won't leave this place alive." Alzera stepped forward. "You betrayed my father. You betrayed our people." Varrock smirked. "Your father is weak. Peace with the humans will make us vulnerable. The Empire needs strong leadership, and soon it will have it." Rick sighed. "I've heard enough. Time to shut this guy up." Varrock's eyes narrowed. "Kill them." The guards raised their weapons. Rick moved fast, drawing his blaster and firing before they could react. Alzera ducked and slashed with her energy dagger, taking down the nearest guard. But Varrock was fast. He lunged at Alzera, drawing his blade. She barely blocked in time, their weapons clashing with a bright spark. Rick fought off the remaining guards, but more were coming. "We can't hold them all." Alzera gritted her teeth, pushing back against Varrock. "We don't need to." She suddenly twisted, using his own momentum against him. Varrock stumbled, and Alzera struck. Her dagger sliced through his armor, forcing him to step back. Rick fired one last shot, hitting the support beam. The tunnel ceiling cracked, sending debris crashing down between them and the guards. "Move," Rick shouted. He grabbed Alzera's arm, pulling her through the tunnel just as the exit door slammed shut behind them. They ran into the palace corridors, alarms blaring in the distance. Rick smirked. "Well, that went well." Alzera shot him a look. "We just barely escaped." "Yeah," Rick said. "But now we know for sure. Varrock is leading the coup. And we're going to stop him." Alzera nodded, determination in her eyes. "Then let's end this." The final battle was coming, and they would be ready. The grand palace of Xyrenia Prime loomed ahead, its golden spires glowing under the artificial light of the capital city. Inside, the royal council chamber was preparing for the most important meeting in Xyrenian history, the final decision on peace with humanity. Rick and Alzera moved quickly through the palace corridors, their footsteps silent against the polished floors. The alarms from their escape had stopped, but they knew Varrock wouldn't give up so easily. He would strike soon, and they had to reach the king before it was too late. As they approached the royal hall, two guards stepped forward. They crossed their spears, blocking the entrance. "Halt," one of them commanded. "No one enters without authorization." Alzera took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am Princess Alzera. Stand aside. The guard's eyes widened in shock. Princess, but you were declared missing. There's no time to explain. Alzira interrupted. My father is in danger. General Varrock is a traitor. He plans to assassinate the king during this meeting. The guards hesitated, looking at each other. But before they could respond, a new voice filled the corridor. Ah, there you are. Rick turned, raising his blaster. Varrock stood at the end of the hall, flanked by heavily armed soldiers. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with fury. You're quite persistent, Varrock said, stepping closer. But your little adventure ends here. Rick smirked. Funny, I was about to say the same to you. Alzira glared at the general. It's over, Varrock. I know everything. You, Lord Cavier, the coup. I will expose you to the entire council. Varrock sighed. You're still young, princess. You don't understand how weak your father has become. He clings to peace while our enemies grow stronger. The empire needs warriors, not diplomats. Rick rolled his eyes. Yeah. Big speeches, betrayal, blah, blah, blah. Can we skip to the part where we stop you? Varrock chuckled. Very well. He raised his hand. His soldiers aimed their weapons. Rick cursed. They were outnumbered. But before anyone could fire, the sound of clashing steel rang out. From behind Varrock's forces, a group of royal guards charged in, weapons drawn. The lead guard, an older Zerenian with a scared face, shouted, Protect the princess. Arrest the traitors. Chaos erupted. Rick fired first, taking down 2 of Varrock's men. Alzira grabbed a fallen spear, moving with deadly precision as she fought through the enemy soldiers. The palace hall became a battlefield, filled with the sounds of gunfire and clashing blades. Varrock drew his own sword, slashing through the royal guards with brutal strength. His eyes locked onto Alzira. You should have stayed dead, girl, he snarled. Alzira met his attack with her energy dagger. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. She gritted her teeth, pushing against his strength. You will never rule Zerenia, she said, her voice steady. Not while I live. Varrock smirked. Then you won't live for long. He struck hard, forcing her back. Rick saw Alzira struggling and moved fast. He aimed his blaster. But before he could fire, a powerful force slammed into him. One of Varrock's officers tackled him to the ground. The 2 rolled across the floor, struggling for control. The officer punched Rick hard in the ribs. Rick grunted but twisted, grabbing the officer's arm and flipping him over. With a quick motion, he slammed his blaster into the man's head, knocking him out. Rick jumped to his feet just in time to see Varrock disarm Alzira. Her dagger clattered to the floor. Varrock raised his sword for the final strike. Not happening, Rick growled. He fired. The plasma blast hit Varrock in the shoulder. The general staggered back, clutching his wound. Alzira didn't hesitate. She grabbed her fallen dagger and lunged forward. With a swift motion, she slashed across Varrock's arm, forcing him to drop his sword. The fight was over. Varrock fell to one knee, breathing heavily. The remaining traitorous soldiers were either captured or dead. The battle was won. The scared royal guard stepped forward. Princess, we must go. The king must hear of this at once. Alzira nodded. She turned to Rick, her eyes filled with gratitude. You saved my life. Rick smirked. Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna let some angry general ruin our day. Alzira chuckled. Then she turned back to Varrock. Your coup has failed. Varrock looked up at her, his face twisted with rage. You think this is over? The council will never accept you as ruler. The war will come, whether you like it or not. Alzira stared at him. Then I will be ready. The guards hauled Varrock to his feet, binding his hands. Rick looked at Alzira. So, what now? She took a deep breath. Now we save my father and end this once and for all. With that, they turned toward the council chamber. The final confrontation was about to begin. The grand doors of the council chamber stood before them, tall and imposing. Inside, the fate of Zerenia was being decided. Alzera took a deep breath, steadying herself. "This is it," she said. "We expose Verok's plan, save my father, and stop the coup." Rick smirked. "Just another day in space, huh?" The scared royal guard beside them nodded. "We must move quickly. The council won't believe words alone. We need proof." Alzera glanced at the restrained Verok, who was being dragged by 2 guards. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with rage. "The proof is right here," she said. "Verok will answer for his crimes." With a firm nod, she pushed open the grand doors. Inside, the royal council was in session. The hall was filled with noble Zyrenians, all dressed in elegant robes. At the center, on a raised throne, sat King Vaynor, Alzera's father. His once strong figure looked tired, worn from the burdens of leadership. Beside him stood Lord Kivir, a high-ranking noble and Verok's secret ally. He was in the middle of a speech. "This peace treaty is an insult to our people," Kivir declared. "The humans are weak. We must prepare for war, not diplomacy." Murmurs of agreement spread through the council. The king raised a hand for silence, but before he could speak, the doors slammed open. Alzera strode in, her head held high. Gasps filled the room. "Princess Alzera," one council member whispered. "She was supposed to be dead." King Vaynor's eyes widened. "Alzera." His voice was weak, filled with disbelief. Alzera's heart clenched at his tired expression, but she couldn't stop now. "Father, I have returned, and I bring the truth." She stepped aside, revealing the captured Verok. The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Kivir's face darkened. "This is outrageous. Guards, seize." Rick cut him off, stepping forward. "Yeah, no, we're done playing games." He pulled out a small holo device and activated it. A projection appeared in the air, recordings of Verok's secret meetings, his orders to eliminate Alzera, and proof of his coup. The room fell silent. King Vaynor's face hardened as he watched. "Verok," he said, his voice filled with quiet fury. "You betrayed me." Verok didn't flinch. "I did what was necessary." "You are weak, Vaynor. You cling to peace while our enemies sharpen their blades." The council erupted in arguments. Some still supported Verok's ideology, but others saw the truth. His ambition had nearly destroyed them. Kivir, realizing the tide was turning, sneered. "This changes nothing. Zyrenia was meant to rule, not bow to weaklings." Alzera turned to him, her voice firm. "You're wrong. Strength isn't just about war. It's about knowing when to fight and when to build. Peace with humanity isn't surrender, it's survival." Kivir scowled, reaching for a hidden weapon. "Enough of this." But before he could act, Rick raised his blaster. "Bad idea, buddy." Guards swarmed in, arresting Kivir and his supporters. The coup had failed. Verok, now restrained, gave Alzera one last look. "You think this victory will last?" Alzera met his gaze. "Yes, because I will make sure of it." The doors closed behind him as he was dragged away. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Then King Vaynor stood, his eyes locked on his daughter. "Alzera, my child, you have saved our people." She stepped forward, emotions swelling in her chest. "I only did what was right, Father. I will always protect our people." A slow clap echoed through the hall. Rick crossed his arms. "Not to ruin the moment, but I'd say that went pretty well." The council members murmured in agreement. For the first time in years, Zerenia had a chance for true peace. Vaynor looked at Rick. "And you, a human, yet you risked everything for my daughter and my kingdom." Rick shrugged. "What can I say? I'm just a guy who hates bad guys." Alzera smiled. "A very stubborn guy." The king chuckled, then turned to the council. "The time for war is over. It is time to forge a new path. My daughter will ensure it." The council erupted in cheers. As the meeting ended, Rick and Alzera stepped onto the palace balcony, looking over the city. "So," Rick said, "what now, princess?" Alzera smirked. "Now, we rebuild. Together." Rick nodded. "Sounds good, but just to be clear, does this mean I actually have to marry you?" Alzera laughed. "You did say you were taking me as your wife, didn't you?" Rick grinned. "Guess I did." And as the city lights glowed beneath them, they knew this was just the beginning of a new future. The end.